Know what we're talking about.
Everyone says they love him.
Yeah.
Who knows how? Crystal was not the person.
Oh my God. Good thing I did that before. I never realized. I'd like to call the meeting to order, 6:01. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. Let the record reflect that all board members are present and both of our student reps are here as well. And pledge allegiance, and we'll have the flag up on the monitors. For the last time, next week or next meeting, there will be a flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Review of agenda, I think the only thing we wanted to change was an executive session afterwards. Is that correct? Can I get a motion to make that change to the agenda?
I make a motion to add executive session to today's agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Do we have any public comment, Kayla? No? You know, it's different with the different room, we have to get used to things. We have no public comment, so I don't have to do my little spiel, yay. Student voice.
That's us. Sorry, I'm Cameron. I'm a senior at Sultan High School,
I'm Isabella Webb. I'm a junior at Sultan High School.
and we're just gonna talk about some few things kind of going on. Sorry guys, we're getting sick. I'm being sick, so my voice is slowly coming back. So bear with me. Starting off with some sports. Right now, our girls basketball team is playing Manor right now at home. So if this ends pretty fast, maybe you can stop by and cheer on our girls.
And then they also have a game this Saturday, which I believe is a postseason game. So we're rooting them on. And they actually placed pretty high in their seeds, so they'll have quite a few more home games in the postseason. And then boys just had pre-districts for wrestling this past Saturday, and almost every wrestler made it through pre-districts, which is pretty impressive. So we have a good chance at state. And then the musical is next week, Thursday the 20th through Saturday the 22nd. So make sure you guys get your tickets. It's the Addams Family. You guys are familiar.
Okay, and then last couple of things, we had some snow days this last week, so right now students are kind of just getting back into school again after kind of little fun days, so getting back into that. And then me and Isabella are excited because this week is our first visit to Gold Bar Elementary. So this is a kind of a project we've been working on because we feel we represent all of our students, not just the high school, and so we want to get out and make sure we're talking to all of our students, including our elementary schools. So that's what we get to do this week. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Do any board members have any comments they'd like to share, Michael? Mike?
No.
Isaac?
Nope.
Marianne? Nope. Okay. Moving right along, SCS Early Learning Data Presentation.
Sometimes it's easier to see on. Yeah. Get over here, you gotta do the talk. In case you want to look at it on paper, it's easier to write on or manipulate or whatever.
I like paper copies, thank you.
Whatever works. All right. So I'm gonna just give a brief overview of what each of these data points are, and then I've got Mrs. Van Orden and Mrs. Comby here, two of our reading interventionists that work with students that are below grade level in reading. And they'll talk a little bit about what they do and what this data means to them. And yeah, so the first one, a couple of different things that Mr. Chaplik had asked me to share, two different topics. The first one being first graders at grade level in reading. The first graph up there at the top, that horizontal graph, is a reading diagnostic graph from our iReady. It's our online diagnostic that we do. It's one piece of data that we use. It's not the only piece of data, but it is one. It'll give us an overall reading score for students based on how they did independently on a computer-based test. So for a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, that can be complicated, but nevertheless, it gives us some data. So it shows that right now 38% of our students are on or above grade level, with 29% of them performing above the first grade level at the midpoint in the year, which is great. 62% of them are performing below grade level at this time on end of year standards, so that's fairly expected. We will hopefully get that green bar quite a bit larger when it comes to our spring diagnostic. But iReady is,
Compared to the fall.
yeah, the fall one is down there shaded below it, so you can see that they've made some progress at the beginning of the year with 15% of students below, 15% of students on or above to 38 now. Our other assessment that we use is a benchmark assessment. It is a one-on-one reading assessment where the teacher or a paraeducator reads with the student. And so all students at our school are assessed that way too. It's a little more authentic, maybe a little more accurate, because it's an adult reading with a student one-on-one. It's not a computer. So for most students, it works pretty well. And currently, we have 56% of our first graders on or above grade level, according to that reading diagnostic. So iReady usually scores us a little lower than what we see as actual. But we use multiple data points, so it's another one. This jumbly thing of numbers that you see here in colors, we have this for every class in the entire school, K4. Title, it's the one up from there, Kayla, the one you were just on. Yeah, they're both similar, but our title lap reading department did this assessment for every student, K4. So about 600 students in the month of September and a little bit into October, and they did this assessment for each student. And so it goes over the core phonics assessment. We assess all those different areas. You can see it's kind of small, but in the black column there on the top, all those different areas of phonics every student was assessed in. I just gave you a snapshot of 2 classes here, examples of second grade classes where you can kind of see an overview of areas in red that students are needing to work on in phonics, as well as areas in green where students have mastered those phonics areas. The next graphs down is the phonological awareness assessment, and then I'm gonna let Lisa and Maddie talk about what those 2 things, what they do with this data from these 2 things. So phonics assessment, and then the next graph down is phonological awareness. Those are 2 separate but equally important things. Oftentimes we hear phonics and we get looped into phonics, but the phonological awareness is just as important. And so I'll let you guys talk about what you guys do with this data, and then Kayla, the next graph down as well.
I think the most important thing to note that we do with it is monitor progress and teach students according to what they need to be taught. So we did it with the whole school. This year, we hadn't done that before, but with phonics being important, we wanted to kind of see how it ties into BAS or how it correlates with BAS, which there was a pretty high correlation, we noticed. Like if BAS is the benchmark assessment, the reading assessment that we give individually to each student, it was kind of not surprising, but a little bit, because you wonder how much does it affect their reading level? Anyway, this just really breaks it down, like where are the weaknesses? Is it CVC words? Is it digraphs? Is it vowel teams? What do the students actually need, and what's holding them back from reaching the next, moving up in their reading skills? So we use this data to make our groups and bring people into our what we call Reading Club program. And it's great baseline data, and now we just are doing it again for winter, and we can see progress. We regroup kids so we can work on what their specific needs are. So, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, not only just for our reading clubs, it's also helping the general education, them like having an extra set of tools to help them with their curriculum and grouping for their tier 2 groups and their tier 1 whole instruction. So this really just helps pinpoint data driven instruction and making sure all their bases are covered, whether you're doing phonics or whole language with reading, which you need everything for the best of both worlds.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so you can see in the next example, most of it is green. It's still a second grade example on the phonological awareness. It's typically what we would see, a lot of those classes as they get into second grade, the students start.
That's still cool.
That's still the core, yeah, the next one down. The students start testing out, more of them will test out. Some of our second grade classes have the majority of students that were already tested out of their phonological awareness by the beginning of the year, which is not unheard of. And so, but like Maddie said, this helps our classroom teachers too with the expectation that they're providing some of those interventions within the classroom too. We know that we can't just provide interventions by pulling students out. We have to do it in the gen ed classroom. And then some students will get that extra dose of help if they need it by being pulled out at times. But and the last 2 pages in the packet, you guys probably saw that, it's kind of a summary of what the past and what the core is, these 2 assessments, really what it's assessing in phonics and what phonological awareness is. So if you're looking for some light reading, I included that information in there. The next graph, and there's just an example of, this is from one of our kindergarten classrooms. It's her data based on the phonological awareness assessment data. It's just a way that our kindergarten classes organize that, our kindergarten and first grade classes, they organize that into those pie charts. I don't know if we can scroll down, Kayla, to the next one. Awesome. Yeah, there we go. So this is one of our kindergarten classes. This is the teacher's access point from it. It graphs those areas so she can quickly look at a glance at her class to see areas that the classes in general are struggling with. But then within each of those pie charts, she's able to get into individual students as well to find out what specific skills those students are lacking to then provide additional instruction or intervention. Or in some cases enrichment if we have enough kids who have mastered those already. But yeah, so again, it's nothing different. It's just a different way that it's organized and showing you that the classrooms, our primary classrooms, have access to that organizational tool. It's part of their Walk Kids data collection too. So we'll get into that in a minute. The next chart on there, I'm trying to give you guys a real overview of all the different data we use. There's a million pieces of it, and I could spend the next 2 weeks in here talking at you about it, but just trying to give you just snapshots of different things that we utilize. I get asked, not just by Dan, but often, well, how many kids are at grade level in this? Well, what piece of data do you want to look at? We have so much, and so the nice thing is we're able to use all of this information to really get to know our students as readers. And by the time they're done at elementary school in 6 years, we have 6 years worth of this data that we do 2 or 3 times a year for every student. And we really can tell you everything you need to know about where they are, where they've been, and hopefully where they should be going next. But this is an overview of the Winter iReady data. Again, it's phonics, the phonics specific domain. You can see the kids, or the percentages in green and the striped green, so on or above, or and those come out to about 50% until we get to grade 3, and then they jump up into the 80s typically. There's a pretty obvious cutoff there between 2nd and 3rd grade. That difference is phonological awareness, or phonics in this case, should be mastered by the end of 2nd grade. The Common Core or the Washington State Learning Standards don't have phonics standards. Phonics is built into the ability to read at grade level. And so it's not that we're saying, oh, in 2nd grade you teach these phonics skills because you teach the phonics skills as the kids are needing them. But typically by the end of 2nd grade, students have tested out of that domain in iReady. Not always the case. You can see that, especially in 5th grade, we have 15% of our students that are 3 grade levels or more below. That's due to a couple factors. 5th graders and online testing is hit and miss sometimes. But for the most part, it's fairly accurate, and those would be students that are on IEPs or that need additional help in a significant way. in the area of phonics. But for the most part, we're seeing that might be 5 to 10 kids within a grade level that are receiving interventions specific outside of the primary grades to phonics. A lot of our classroom teachers are providing those interventions for phonics even in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, which is not unheard of, but it's not the most common thing either, because like I said, they should be getting those skills by the time they're out of 2nd grade. All right, I'm almost done talking, I promise. The last page there, those 2 bar graphs, then I'll have you guys chime in on kind of what else we do with all this stuff. So this next graph here is our WA Kids data from this year, from this school year, and then I included the trend there from the last 7 years or whatever that is. WA Kids, for what you know about it, is the one-time assessment that the state requires all kindergarten students to do, or kindergarten teachers to do. There's different domains, 6 different domains that they do, and it has to be done by the end of October, more or less. It's done by the teacher. Most of it, a lot of it is very objective. There's some subjectivity to it. Teachers go through a calibration of making sure they're kind of on the same page when giving the assessment. But overall, it gives us a general idea of where we are with our students coming in and how prepared they are for kindergarten. The data bar from this year, for one reason or another, includes our TK kids. We would anticipate our transition to kindergarten students not being ready for kindergarten, hence the transition to kindergarten program that they're in. But it did get included on the state report card as in our WA Kids data. So that number may be a little bit off, that 48.1%. It might be a little bit higher. It's hard to tell. I included the state averages on there for the last 3 years just to show that our trend is going in the right direction. We were about 11% below the state average of kids coming in ready for kindergarten. This year we were 5.5% below the state average. I think one of the important takeaways for me as the building leader of what this looks like or what this means is we have this many kids coming in that are performing where they need to be or above, but being that we're 5 to 11% behind the state average, by the time we reach 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we're outperforming every average in the state in all categories, math, reading, and science in every grade level, 3 through 5. And so in those first 3 years, we're starting 11% behind and we're gaining up to 15% ahead by the time they're in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade. We outperform the state average on every assessment, including our EL progress and EL proficiency. So making great strides, doing great things. Our primary teachers and our intermediate as well are just working their butts off, doing a great job. But and I didn't want that to go unnoticed, that yes, we're starting out behind, if you will, but we're coming out well ahead of the average of the state anyway. And that's, like I said, due to the hard work of the teachers and the interventionists and just everybody working together. The next graph on there I included just so you can see the different domains in what goes into the WA Kids assessment of the Ready for Kindergarten. And I included the state averages there, so you can see we're just killing it in the physical. Man, those kids are physically ready for kindergarten, and I can attest to that. They're fast and strong, and they love to run. But the obvious one that stands out is math. I think everybody in this room has probably been exposed to our math scores as a district. It's no secret that it's an area that we as a district are performing, at least at the graduation level, 50% lower than the state average. And that all starts with kids when they come to us and where they leave us and the progress they make between here and there. We're underperforming the state in the most significant way in that category as my school. And it's an area that is also one of the biggest indicators for success in school is early numeracy, more so than literacy. So literacy is important. Reading with kids is super important. But the impact that early numeracy has on students is one of the #1 indicators of success in both math and reading as kids work their way through school. So as much emphasis as we can put on math and early numeracy, numbers, 1-to-1 correspondence, counting what these weird symbols represent before kids start with us or when they start with us, we're gonna get the biggest bang for our buck by focusing on math skills, as well as literacy. I say too much, I'll get punched over here, but I know literacy is super important, so is math. But math is, it's not the most popular thing to say sometimes, because I think we've all in this room, if we've had kids, it's, you know, once they're conceived, we start reading to them. But we gotta start doing more than just reading, and math is a scary topic for a lot of adults, but it's, you know, we can all count, we can all do one-to-one and figure that out. So just a little emphasis there for the board as we're looking at early learning goals and doing different things to make sure we're giving it the big picture as well. But now you guys get a chance to say more.
About what?
I don't know.
Like, do you have questions?
Yeah, I guess
Questions?
turning it over to questions, that was a lot of information all at once. I'm sorry I can't be like, hey, 100 kids of ours are there, were they right where they need to be? Because it's not that straightforward. I can tell you that we get about, I mean, we're getting good results, like I said, compared to our colleagues across the state. I know that it was recognized at the beginning of the year. We just celebrated as a staff at our last staff meeting, because we finally got our cool little banner for being recognized by the state. But we were recognized for 2 areas, as was Gold Bar, the same 2 areas, growth and closing opportunity gap or achievement gaps for certain areas. And only 3% of schools statewide received one of those, and only 8% of schools statewide received the other. And so for both of our schools to both get both of those, we're in the top 10% of schools being recognized in those 2 categories was pretty phenomenal. So again, it's nothing that Heather and I have done, but the teachers work really hard and do a lot of great stuff. And Mr. Chapek does a great job.
That's not what I'm looking for.
No.
I just wanted to ask a question of these wonderful staff members
Yeah,
next year. I don't know if the board knows, but Maddie, this is your 2nd year with us? First year, okay? I take that back, first year. But we used to try to offer the program we're offering at Sultan Elementary with one person, and that's Lisa in that role. And so the need was so much larger than what we're able to do. And as the population has grown, we brought Maddie in. And I guess my question to you guys, because what we're gonna do next when we look at Gold Bar is they're gonna talk about their PLC and kind of give you an up-close look at it. But what do you need to really make us, give us the ability to serve all kids in the right way? I mean,
Well, one thing I have noticed and I'm hearing from teachers and seeing is kinder supporting for paras in kinder. If they had a push-in para or even a full-time para, I think that would be an amazing thing. We're looking at the data shows, that we are a little behind, but like Mr. Van Orden said, they are taking off. But if we want to really attack those phonics and really helping them with their reading, our class sizes are bigger, so maybe an idea could be like trying to make a little bit smaller class sizes in kindergarten and having a push-in para. So that way when they're doing their tier 2 support with their reading group, they have an additional adult coming in there. So instead of having only one group of kids receiving true instruction with a teacher and they're teaching them, there's another additional group where kids are getting a rotation of that. More kids are gonna have a more higher value of what they're doing in those small group instruction. Or instead of doing that, you could cap your kindergarten classes and you could have a full-time para in there. So there's always going to be a para with there. There's been a lot of models that I have seen and I know you guys have probably seen and heard of, and that seems to be really, really effective of getting that support and being able to reach that intervention. Kids are sponges, especially when they're little, so having those additional resources and support is a truly valuable and remarkable thing when they have those extra needs.
in my mind, it's no coincidence that one of the board's 4 goals is early learning. And so whatever we can support to make sure it's on track from the beginning, because it is way better for the child and everybody. Because you think about it, the biggest challenge that I always faced in the classroom was the dailiness of it. Meaning the day happens, you're busy with your class, you're busy serving students, and then before you have time to even respond to the day, the next day's there. And intervening under those circumstances is hard because it takes time, it takes the right structure, to be able to figure out what a kid needs and serve them, whether it's for an intervention or it's an extension. And so building a structure, like you talk about kindergarten, my immediate thought is it would allow much more time on task than the mundane, management kind of duties that you would have if with young kids that are learning how to do all this stuff, so. But that's it for me. Board members, you guys have questions?
How do you feel that PLCs are helping?
Like you guys to talk, if you want to share what you guys do in regard to PLC.
How are they helping?
Do you find them helpful?
Oh, yeah, we wouldn't have any we wouldn't know what was going on with, I can't imagine not having them. They are a foundational piece of what we do. We have to collaborate, we have to share the information we have with each other, get ideas, see what's working here, if something's working great here, share what you did, what did you do to get your students scores, when we compare scores in PLC, how did you get your students knowing that and what can we all do different? That's just a tiny piece but there's so much that goes into PLCs.
Yeah,
that's-
PLCs are vital. That's
Yeah.
like where you have your set time, like teachers are gonna have their prep time where they can go, but then it's even a more valuable time when they have their PLC time. You have data, that's where you're getting your data-driven instruction. You're pulling up all your data, you're looking at, okay, kids here, like not only just for this one class, you have your data sets here where you need to work. As a whole, where's the hole in this? Why is it a hole? How can we fix this? The more brains you have together, the more the merrier, right? You're gonna be able to really solve those. So you're gonna help each other with every category in teaching, and it really it's better for the students. When teachers have that time to collaborate, they have time to lesson prep, analyze their data, that is a true value to making sure they can do it, and that's how teachers are able to really skyrocket their thing for their kids, making sure that everyone is getting like the same assessments. When a lot of the times like on these data, when you're seeing these holes, you want to make sure that as your classroom or your team that you have vertical alignment, right? So that way what are our CFAs, our cumulative formative assessments for kindergarten? These are the assessments we have in fall, winter, and spring. Every teacher in kindergarten follows these assessments. You can still, as an individual teacher, have your freedom with certain things and you're still following curriculum, but these are your formative assessments. And then how are they lining up to first grade? And not only should kindergarten be meeting, but they're gonna meet also with first grade, so they have that vertical alignment. So there's no gaps when these kids go from kindergarten to first grade and first grade to second. That way the whole building has that communication and there's the same assessments. So it's just very vertical alignment, and it's the best success for the students, and that's what PLCs create.
Thank you. Michael, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
Mike?
First of all, thank you, great job. I don't wanna harp on the negative, but the ones that are not at grade level in reading, it's about 45, 50 students. What are we doing for them? Because if they don't get caught up, it's gonna be something that's gonna follow them through middle school and high school. So what's the plan there? You don't have to answer right now, I mean, you can get back to us, but
That's a good
if you
question.
do have it, I'd love to hear it.
It's a great question, and it's a lot of what these two teachers do. It's a lot of what the gen ed teachers are working on as well, but it kind of goes on to all of these questions that were just asked too, is, this is what the conversation in our PLCs is about. Going back to Dan, is what do you need? Well, I spent half the day under a desk in kindergarten today, not because I was hiding from anybody in particular, I was trying to find somebody. And I bring that up because I was one out of 124 kindergartners that I have in my building. And it took 2 adults half the day just to be able to work with that student to get him regulated. I use that as an example because we've got 24 kids in a kindergarten class right now with 1 adult, and it is absolute chaos. There should be 16 kids in a kindergarten class with another adult if we wanna make a difference. If you want an early learning goal that's gonna be impactful, that's your early learning goal that's gonna make a difference. It's not the talks, it's not the bullet points, it's not the meetings about it, it's doing something that we're gonna notice, and that's what it is. So for those kids that don't get that ability and are below grade level after kindergarten going into first grade, we have an intervention program that works, that makes a tremendous amount of growth, gets as many of them caught up as we can. We're able to serve about 160 students in our intervention program this year out of 715 roughly. It's not enough. We don't serve enough. We added a half-time employee this year, which was great. It definitely helps, but we shouldn't have more than 160 kids school-wide that are below grade level in reading, but we do. And we're not able to serve fifth graders at all. So we serve only K through 4. And that funding is also supposed to support in math, which we know is our lowest performing area, but we aren't able to support enough in reading to even get to touch math. So I know there's supports given to secondary schools, that's great, they need them too. But again, if we wanna fix the problem, we have to fix the problem when it starts. We can't replace the roof and wonder why our foundation keeps sagging. So it's gonna keep sagging until we fix the foundation, and that is by supporting a strong quality program, starting TK and beyond, or even pre-K with Ready for Kindergarten. It's a great step in the right direction. TK is too. Statewide, kids coming in out of TK are performing above their peers. I don't think it needed anybody that knows data to tell you that, but turns out another year of school is helpful. So, but Mike, to answer your question, it's handled through our intervention program through Reading Club. They meet once a day, 4 times a week for 30 to 40 minutes in groups of 3 with 1 adult. And they work on exactly what that data says that they need to work on, whether it be phonics, comprehension, fluency, all of those things. And that is in addition to their classroom teachers having to do the same thing in class, so.
I know that we're trying to fix what's coming in.
Yeah.
But before they leave, you know, if there's anything that we can do to help
For sure.
capture or help, you know, that 15% that's going to middle school next year.
Yeah.
You know, if they're 3 levels below where they should be,
Yeah.
anything we can do to help
More
try and
staff,
get
I
them.
think, is what they need.
Well, and yes and no. I mean, if we're looking at the 5th grade numbers, that's about 16 kids that are also gonna be on IEPs for services in there. Not saying that that's an excuse, but it is the supports that they're getting for it. They're significantly below, due in part either to a specific learning disability or the fact that we didn't get them what they needed early enough on and they fell too far behind. But nevertheless, all means all, and all kids should be getting whatever it is that they need to be successful, whether they're on an IEP or whether they speak Spanish or anything in between, so.
Isaac, questions?
How many kindergarten classes do you have there?
5.
And they're all at around 24?
22 to 24. We have 30-ish kids in our SLC program as well. And so those kids, that's K2. And so those kids spend some time in gen ed, sometimes in special ed. And so at any given time, some of those kids could be in the gen ed class that would bump it up to 24. But they're also down
How
to
many?
22.
Kindergartners have you grown since we started school?
About 10 in the gen ed and 2 or 3 in the SLC. About 10% of our kindergartners are in our SLC, which is, I don't know, alarming. It's a pretty significant number. Now, we have the district K2 SLC, so we have some students from Gold Bar that are in kindergarten as well, but the majority of them are almost all of them are gen ed all day long, 90% of them.
Mary Ann, questions?
I do have a question. If we could magically give you X amount of paras,
6.
That means a 6th teacher too, right?
Yes, sir. I mean, if these numbers stay consistent, right now we have about 124 kids in each cohort, K2. That tells me that next year we're probably gonna have about 124 kids, because that's what we've gotten in kindergarten almost every year, or at least by the end of kindergarten. And so that would require us to, yes, add another kindergarten class next year. And we would still be over 20 kids in each class, even if we add one. So it makes a difference adding a teacher, but if you wanna make a difference, it's gonna be more than one. But, you know, it goes all the way across. We have 24 kids in our 2nd grade classrooms too that are in overload. And so it's not unique to just kindergarten. It's unique to Sultan Elementary right now because we're growing in a significant way. But I like to use comparisons, nothing against Gold Bar, but we have as many kindergartners as K2 students at Gold Bar. So, I mean, when you think of it like that, that's one of our grade levels is the size of half of their school, well, half of their grades. only because they have super small grade classes in those classes or those grades right now, but we have more boys than they have students. And so when you're, yes, we're big, and I hope the community is hearing, like, we're growing, we're out of space, we're out of
Right,
room.
how many classrooms do you have open?
0.5, yeah,
And how many students?
709 as of today.
And what's the school built for?
Jill, 200, 485, something like that.
416.
416, yeah. And yeah, it's real. I mean, it's real, and the yeah, we're still doing great things. And that's what's important. So
Cameron and Bella, do you guys have questions?
Yeah, well, obviously, like, us students are educated in education, but would it be helpful if we could have, like, high school students act as like a paraeducator almost? Like, even if it's not like helping the students do their math, which obviously we know how to add and subtract and whatnot, but even if we could like help grade, like when I was in 6th grade, I would go to like my old 5th grade teacher's class, and while she was like teaching, I would, grade old work for her.
yeah,
Is that something we could do?
that's a great question. And we host a ECE class on our campus right now through Snow Isle. That has, I think it's only 4 or 5 students, but they're there for 3 hours a day, and they participate helping in some of the kindergarten classrooms. And they'll graduate with their para endorsement from that program, which is, it's great. And we used to have an elective at the high school where you could be a TA at the elementary, and you'd come down for a period and you were a TA. And so seeing those things that went away years ago, but it was helpful. We only had a couple kids that did it, but there's some logistics of getting to and from, but
I think that
definitely.
would be nice to bring back, cause like I do running start, so I have my like whole day free, and I mean personally I wanna be a pediatrician, so it'd be really nice to be like working one-on-one with students.
Oh, yeah.
I don't do Snow Isle, so it's not really an option, but
He's
like.
gonna hire you right now.
Let's
Yeah,
go.
let's
That's today.
I mean, I know a bunch of students, like, we'd love to like go down there and like
That
work
would be
one-on-one with
amazing.
students.
Yeah,
We would
that's-
love
That's
to
something
have
that we
it.
could
That's
start.
something we can work on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was gonna ask you
Yeah.
about it at our meeting next week.
Yeah, because you guys get to
Yeah,
come
we'll
to
be
our
down
school
there, we'll
next
come
week.
by.
Yeah, but if that's something we could do, like, I feel like it'd be nice to have a program outside of Snow Isle.
And the kids would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely would.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right, well, thank you very much,
Thank you, guys.
appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Thanks a lot. Good clap for you.
Oh,
Not for you, for the ladies. Heather, you are next, Gold Bar Elementary, discuss PLCs.
Thinking the same thoughts, it's cause we're across from each other.
I just wanna start by saying, I just am so thankful for this 3rd grade team's willingness to kind of take a risk. We're talking about like how do we coordinate, giving the school board kind of a snapshot of what this looks like, and I'll just kind of leave it to you, but these guys just jumped right up and said, we'll do it. And so,
Yeah, well, and I'll just give some introductions first. I'm Heather Anderson, the principal of Goldbar Elementary. And I brought with me my 3rd grade team. I've got Jamie Yeager and Colleen Potterall, who is our long-term leave replacement for Leslie Neville, who's out on maternity leave, and then Sherry Clinner. And Dan, I think you called me about like 1:30 on last Friday, and I was like, it's a PLC Friday. You think you can film your team doing the PLC so that the board can kind of get a good sense of what a PLC teaming meeting looks like. So we did, and I sent you guys the unedited clip. I just went in and they're like, okay. And I filmed for, about 11 minutes of their meeting. But because these meetings are so latent with student data and student names, I had to we're gonna show you just little snippets of it today, but wanted to make sure that you guys knew that the invitation's always there. And the best way to see it is to just live in it and come out. And I know that Aubrey has extended the same invite to his school, because trying to share with you in this format, we had to cut out all but like 2 minutes of it just to be able to present it without compromising student data. So they are gonna do most of the talking for this presentation, and I'll just fill in as needed. So, do we have
Thanks, Heather.
Oh yeah, do we have the PowerPoint? Taylor?
I appreciate you taking out, making sure that the kids' names aren't on there. That's great, cause
and the interesting part, just to make another part of the point, is when I called Heather, I didn't know when their next day was. Because one of the issues that we struggle with is time. And it just happened to be one of those days. So I said, can you do this today? And they said, yes, we can.
While we're waiting What days do you do PLC, so if we wanted to drop in? Good question for
There's a calendar
both.
that you can, that we can send to you because, although we have a lot of them scheduled, they rotate sometimes between district directed, individually directed, or PLC Fridays right now. So they're always on Fridays, but you'll have to look through the calendar to see.
Okay.
And we can resend that out. I know many of our teams, find that that's not enough time, and, we have a common planning time scheduled within our master schedule, and they will often, they have to function efficiently, they have to meet at least one day a week during their common planning time. This team often goes more than that, but PLC Fridays are the sacred Fridays where they commit to at least that. And I have it on, well, I need to share it with you again.
Sorry. We're still struggling with
Dragging it.
writing. Such a drag.
Working the kinks out in all the new
Oh, yeah.
systems.
Taylor, good job. Lots more.
Okay, well, like she said, my name is Jamie Yeager and I'm a member of the third grade team in Gold Bar. And we were just kind of asked to talk about our PLC process, like where we started, where we're at now, and kind of where we're going. I'm also on the district level PLC team, so I've got to work with a lot of the admin and some of the school board as we've been working through this PLC journey here. Go to the next clip. Okay, so Sultan School District is a professional learning community. So when we talk about that, that means everyone's coming together. It's the teachers, it's the admin, it's also the school board. And at the building level, we have BLT teams, which is a team that works together to look at data, analyze data, and determine what needs need to be met for the students next. And then the grade levels have been aligning between Gold Bar and Sultan as well. So the third grade team at Gold Bar has also been working with the third grade level team in Sultan, so that we are aligning all of our work as we go along.
Now, BLT team, if you don't know the acronym, Building Leadership Team, when you're a part of those solution tree trainings, you often hear it referred to as a guiding coalition. So if you're hearing those two, they're very similar to this.
Next clip. It's talking about the power of communication. Our schools are composed of these PLTs. And like Heather said, we did a video of what our team meeting looks like, and you're gonna see snippets of it as we go along. And then the next one, this is just an overview of what the whole process looks like for us. So when we first started doing our work, we decided we had to come up with our essential standards for learning. So there's many standards out there that each grade level needs to teach. And by focusing on what our essential standards are, we came down to what are the most important things that we're guaranteeing that third grade students are going to know when they leave the third grade, whether they are in special ed, whether they, speak Spanish, it doesn't matter. If you're a third grader, you're going to know this before you move into the fourth grade level. And so we came up with our essential standards last year. We had a lot of conversation around it. Again, we aligned that between Gold Bar and Sultan. And we came up with a plan where we came up and we created learning ladders for each of our essential standards. So this is an example of a learning ladder. One of our standards that we're guaranteeing that kids will know when they leave third grade is I can add within 1,000. And so what we did as a team is we sat down and said, okay, well, this is the standard. I can add numbers within 1,000 by regrouping when needed. What are the things that kids need to know in order to build up to that? And then what would they expected to be knowing after that? And so, of course, they're gonna need to know, how to add to 1,000 without regrouping. They're gonna need to know how to add smaller numbers with or without regrouping. It's kind of those building steps in this ladder. And we share this with our kids now and we say, this is what our target is. This is what your goal is by the end. And these are our steps we're gonna take to be able to get there. So every kid knows exactly what they need to know by the end of the year. And these are the steps that they need to get there. And if I have a learning ladder hanging up in my room right now, I can my kids can go up and they can tell you where they're at on the learning ladder. Well, I'm on step 2 right now and I'm working towards step 3. And so they're creating goals around that. The way that we're gonna be using this in the future is we're gonna be doing some backwards planning, creating units based off of this. And so what a unit might look like is a 15-day unit. You say, okay, in these 15 days, I'm gonna teach this essential standard. And so as a team, we're going to come to a consensus on, well, on days 1 and 2, we're gonna be doing step 1. And then we're gonna do a formative assessment to see if everyone knows what step 1 is. And then we're gonna do 3 days on step 2, and then we're gonna do a formative assessment to see if everyone's there. And then we're gonna keep moving up the ladder. As we do our formative assessments, if we're seeing that kids aren't getting it, that's when we put in an intervention day. We pull the kids that don't get it, and then we continue to reteach until they get this. And we just keep moving up the ladder until everyone has met that standard. Step 2 is the do on here, where you're implementing the instruction and the assessments. So we're currently working in this stage, we're working on making common formative assessments and common summative assessments right now. The teams have really been focusing on making sure that there's common summative assessments, so when teams analyze data, they're analyzing the same thing. And then in the next couple of years, we're gonna keep working on adding in those formative assessments. And step 3 is study. And you're going to see an example of that in our video here. That's where we're looking at the results of our assessment data and talking about like, well, this kid knows this and this one doesn't know this. What are we gonna do? How are we gonna group kids to be able to help meet their needs? And then during this stage, we also sit down and look like, you know, Sherry, your class did really great on this. My class didn't do as well. What kind of strategies did you use? We're sharing information like, oh, what did you do to kind of get your class where they were? So we can share those ideas of how to get the rest of the kids there. And then in step 4, we're in ACT, and that's where you take action. And what we do to take action in our building is we have something called WIN groups. And so we set up our day for reading and math in basically almost like an hour and a half blocks. And in the first block, we're doing tier 1 instruction, and tier 1 instruction is what every kid needs to know based on their grade level. It doesn't matter if they're above grade level, below grade level, they need to know their tier 1 instruction. And then we assess them to see if they know their tier 1 instruction, and if they don't, we go into tier 2 instruction during that same block. Tier 2 means that they did not know the information that we're currently teaching. So if I'm teaching multi-digit addition and I need them to know how to regroup within 1,000, these 5 kids did not know how to regroup within 1,000. So I'm taking those kids and I'm doing tier 2 instruction with them and I'm reteaching them so that they know the grade level information. Doesn't matter if they can't add or can't subtract, I'm just focusing on what we are learning at that particular point. And then at the end of that, we go into what we call our WIN block, and we call that our tier 3 instruction. And this is a tier 3 instruction to fill gaps in learning. It's also an extension block for our kids who already get it, so we can teach above and beyond for those kids. And that's when we use each other as a team and we break kids apart. So you're gonna take these kids, you're gonna take these kids, I'm gonna take these kids, and we're gonna be teaching everyone to their specific need. So that's where we're at for ACT. Sherry's gonna break down for us more about what we were doing when we created our essential standards last year. That was the big chunk of our work that we did last year, so.
You're a hard act to follow, Ladybug. Okay, so I am Sherry Klenner and I am on the 3rd grade team at Goldberg. So one of the first things we did when it comes to our description of the standard is we needed to find out which standards were the most important to teach. So as we were looking at those, we kind of said, okay, what are the Common Core standards that the kids have to have? So what do they need? What are the most important ones? And then we also took a look at what are some of the things that are going to be happening on the SBA for them. And that was not everything, but it was a piece of what we were doing. So we took that information and then we turned it into student-friendly language so that the kiddos and their families could understand what their children needed to learn. So that's kind of what that student-friendly vocabulary is. And then the learning ladders, within them, there's like the kind of like examples of what proficient might look like. Because right here, so here is where we need to be. So our learning ladders start at they're progressive, they start the very basic of skills and they move like up the proverbial ladder to get to what they need to be proficient at third grade. And then we went that step further. So if this is what you know at third grade, for those of us who want to go a little bit higher, the next step is this one, and that's the top of that ladder. So that ladder also includes like some of their prerequisite skills. So this very bottom would be like what they have to know before they can get up to that third grade level. So those are in their prerequisite skills. We're still in the process, we're getting closer, but we're still in the process of fine tuning when all of these standards need to be taught. And that's going to come, I believe, when we get into that 15-day plan, correct? Okay, I'm looking forward to that one. And as far as we're working on common summative assessments at this point, so we're not there yet. It's still a work in progress, but we are certainly on our way and working towards what we're doing. And I know our third grade team, when we get together, we do talk about, so our team has gotten together like 2 months in a row and have planned out the entire month saying, okay, this is what we're doing, what are we using for the assessments? So we're starting to get towards those common assessments, but it's still a work in progress. And then as far as that goes, as we are doing our win time, those extension areas are coming within that win time as well. So there's a lot of these pieces that are still in progress that we are working on together.
And point to make, that we have a professional development day coming up next week, Tuesday, Tuesday. And, you know, this work is nothing that you can do in isolation at all. And it's very important to us that students that come to Goldbar have the same caliber education that students who are at Fulton. We switch kids often, you know, they move back and forth between the two schools. So on the 50-50 day, our teams will be meeting collectively to recalibrate because they came to a lot of agreements over the summer or in previous years, but then you've got to get into teaching and into acting and just working on those decisions and without that time to collaborate with the other schools. So we're making a point of using the 50-50 day to have that opportunity for them to calibrate and align and talk about what assessments they're using, what assessments they're using, do they match and why or not.
So what you're gonna see a lot in the clip today is we took quite a few assessments to make sure that our kids were meeting our proficiency that we want. So we used a combination of iReady, BAS, and Words Their Way. But then we also went back and we examined the prior and also the future grade level essential standards. So we can establish where students should be and where we want them to be at the end of their academic year. Anything else we should add to that? Cause you guys kind of covered a whole lot before that, so, next slide, please. And so then, just like Sherry was saying, that we do establish a lot of common pacing together. We are constantly collaborating with one another. I think I'm in their rooms at least 2 to 3 times a day, talking to them about what's going on and to seek input about the content that we are gonna be teaching across the whole grade level. And then we lately have been trying to be in unison on how and when and what we're teaching. And then when we're providing that core content and the assessments for the students' academic careers. We are also, when we're pacing or doing our pacing together, we are also talking about, you know, collecting and examining our data and how to be proactive within our student learning and interventions, which you'll see with our win time here with our intervention that we wanna do. So, anything else to add? Okay.
So, each one of these videos, or each one of these slides that has their pictures in it, there's gonna be a video clip that Kayla will have to hit play on. But one thing I want to emphasize is you will hear a couple names, Elena and Gracie. They are our interventionists, our parallel to Lisa is Elena, she's our reading specialist, and then Gracie is our resource room teacher. And so just as it's important for our grade level teams to be meeting, in order to be effective, we've got to maximize our workforce, right? And get our interventionists involved. They weren't able to be at this team meeting because they have to cycle around and go to as many of them as they possibly can. But the data is stored in a common place this year, thanks to some help with Dave and Carissa, right? We were able to get a Canvas page made where we're able to store some of our PLC notes and our data. And so teams are able to look at that, whether or not the players are there as part of the PLT meeting. So this first one, you'll just kind of hear her setting up the agenda and talking about what that meeting was going to be about.
You might have to turn it.
Yeah, thank you.
It's playing in the room.
Oh, in the.
Oh, it is, okay, hold on, I got it.
Let's just all go in
Just leave
there.
the door open.
Just leave the door open.
Right at the end of second grade, beginning of third grade, so that
Wow, turn that down, dude.
that's gonna blast out when Penny gets it figured out.
Well, it's good to figure out all these little bumps. But you guys have done such phenomenal work, I just am dying to hear it.
It's one of those buttons, change the output to this one,
No.
the speaker selection.
Oh, this button sort of changed the color of the mood light.
Drops the disco ball.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Get it from my laptop if the volume would be loud enough to just hear it on my laptop.
Stop pushing buttons.
Okay, on our agenda today, we were going to meet and talk about making that loud enough, which was on Monday. Elena was going to join us this year with another team to the data using our IRA scores and our VAS to make new groups, win groups.
Sounds like a plan.
So the data was sent for title is we're going to be looking at those bubble kids right now, kind of those right at the end of second grade, beginning of third grade, so that we can get them to the end of third grade. And the names she sent me were. And that's where I had to cut that off. Okay. So it's important that they come prepared to these meetings, and when they talk about time, some of that is just the time to make sure that they're making the best use of their time as a team, and they're having to come completely prepared to have these conversations, or, you don't have time to figure it out once you get there, because, you can't do that. So, next slide, Kayla.
Do you want me to press play on this one?
Yeah, maybe, let's see what the next slide's gonna be here first. Teaming, okay. Our phonics group, we have anyone reading below an M. And I did talk to Gracie about flipping resource for math and reading. And so she's going to be doing reading resource during that time so that they can push in and help with our phonics group.
Okay.
We have about 10 kids below an M at this point, and so that would give us 3 staff from resource room and then a 4th teacher, so we'd have 4 teachers to 10 kids.
Okay.
So, like you guys talked about, needing that extra set of hands in the room so that you can maximize that. When they are splitting up the kids, it's a disproportionate divvying up of students. One group will be really, really large, but we try to keep the most intensive group to be the smallest groupings as possible and put in the most amount of support, so.
Next one's monitoring progress.
Any discussion on any of those?
I don't think so. I mean, when I think about their fluencies, as far as the kiddos in my room, they're good readers, but it's the fluency that trips them up a little bit, because I know when I did their fluency reads, they're still not reading at what is determined to be that 3rd grade fluency level that we've got.
Okay. Yeah, these guys are reading at OP, which is at grade level, but several of them were just exited from title.
Right.
So they're on our watch list.
Okay.
And so we need to make sure that we're keeping up and reporting that data to title so that
Okay. So does Title know what kind of data they expect from us then?
We can keep track of their hot and cold reads.
Okay.
And as we're doing guided reading groups too, kind of just keep an eye on if we're progressing them through the guided reading.
Okay.
Okay,
The last one's collaborating on instructional practices.
So then once they've made the teams and they figured out what their next steps for instruction are gonna be, they've also gotta be in alignment of, Jamie's trusting her kids to Sherry and Sherry's trusting her kids to Colleen and they have to be able to come back to the table in just a couple of weeks and see, hey, did this intervention we just tried work? Did the extension groups, what measures of success did we see there? Do these kids now need another layer of intervention? What are we gonna do? How are we gonna move on? And so it's really important that they know what each other is teaching and what each other is responsible for and how they're gonna be assessing that. So. Should play.
Yeah, so we're gonna start with CBC words for the long vowel. We're gonna begin with lesson 54, based on the data that I pulled from from Words Their Way, where the kids were at. And then during that time, we're gonna do the lessons within UFly, and then I have some guided reading with decodable words, and then roll and read with peers.
the decodables. Okay.
That's where we're gonna start.
I have some other roll and read games available as well, some ideas if you'd like those.
Yeah. Okay. I have notes.
And then Sherry, do you know where you're going to be focusing?
Well, we're gonna go ahead and focus on the hot and cold reads, and we are going to use like the iReady toolbox, some of the reading resources they have, because they have some really good resources as far as realistic fiction, some of the things that it's going to support our essential standards that we're doing, and I'm using those. And with that, I've been introduced to comprehension tools in iReady, and I'm gonna use those for their hot and cold reads and to also help and then have them do some rereading for their fluency, and then work with the comprehension as well, because as we're working on fluency, we wanna make sure we hit that comprehension.
Okay.
We have to have that piece in there.
Which skill are you gonna start with?
We are going to start with asking, I've gotta look at, it's RL 3.1, so asking and answering questions about stories.
3.1.
Which works perfectly with the narrative writing we're doing right now.
Okay. And when do we want to do our next check-in for this wing group? To make sure that we don't need to make any changes?
Well, do we wanna do?
So that is, another piece of, really helpful earlier about the focusing on common standards assessments right now. I mean, we all know what our winter assessments are, what we're doing fall, winter, and spring. We know what the end of the unit assessments are, but we're still working on that formative assessment piece. So like, how are we assessing within the unit, and how are we making sure that we're all doing that the same way? And here shortly when we meet with Sultan, how is Sultan doing that? And are they finding that they're needing the same types of intervention groups that we're finding? Are they seeing the same skills deficits that we're finding? If they're not, why? And what could we be doing different in our practice, or what could they be doing different in their practice to help close those gaps? Do we have one more slide? Yep. Oh, no, thank you.
No, one more.
So our last slide is just talking about how we're in year 2, actually 1.5 of, it takes 5 to 7 years to really get this process going. We've got a lot of great things been happening. We've created our essential standards. We know that we have a guaranteed and viable curriculum, which means that we have a curriculum that can help us teach these standards, but we just need the time to be able to go through it and say what pieces of it are we gonna use to help us meet those needs. We're working on common summative assessments, and each of the individual buildings has been working on a data collection, so we have places where we're storing all of our data and tracking our data so that we can talk about it. So practice makes perfect. We're not perfect yet, but we're working towards it, and been putting in a lot of work to get us aligned within our teams, within our schools, and across both of the schools as well, so.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Great job, you guys.
Thank you.
Bella and Want to make sure anybody has questions, Bella and Cameron? Marianne, any questions? Oh, sorry.
You say you also need people in the classroom. Would you be also open to that para thing
Yeah,
too from
our-
high
one
school
of our
students?
biggest- We're always, come in anytime. Our biggest barrier is trying the transportation piece, getting people
Yeah.
all the way up
Mhm.
to Gold Bar within, you know.
But I'm also thinking of like our especially our Gold Bar students, if they have a first period there kind of thing, because they live there.
Anytime, all the
Okay.
time, every
Sweet.
time.
We should work on like a paper that we could have at the high school to have like students sign up to do that.
You have a remote learning day, we can log you in from our building, so.
Okay.
Marianne, questions?
I'm gonna ask you the same question I asked Aubrey. Give me a magic number if you were to have additional paras.
We're pretty effective at utilizing the staff that we have, although we're always shorthanded. Our numbers in our building are nowhere near the numbers that Aubrey has. I have 2 kindergarten classrooms with 20 kids each, right? I have 2 first grade classrooms, I have 3 classrooms per grade level, so my numbers are much smaller. But so I don't know that an extra para is necessarily the answer. I think that it's just finding the right way to allocate the resources that we have and finding the time to make that collaboration happen. We're really trying hard to make sure that we're getting our special education teachers and our title teacher involved in this PLC process so that we can capitalize on the kids that are going to those reading programs or going to the special education programs, not making that a separate thing, but a part and an extension of this thing. I think every teacher would say, hey, give me a para. Absolutely, and if you wanna do that, 50. But, so I don't have the same magic number that he's got.
Thank you.
Isaac? I just wanna thank you guys for coming and sharing, and it would be great if like everyone in the district had to watch both of these presentations or was able to watch both of these presentations, cause it just shows when you think like, I know when I grew up and you think what teachers do, they come in and they teach, they stand there and show you stuff, but there's so much that goes into it that I never knew. That it's just crazy the amount of work that you guys have to do, so thank you for that.
And I wanna just shout out my team here, it's just a lot to be brave and to let me just come in and say, yes, with no notice whatsoever, I'm gonna film you guys, because, like they said, we're not perfect yet. I think, Kayla, there's 2 other slides, or 2 other like little pieces of this thing, and what Jamie said, this is a process, and even if we were in year 7, it's still an ongoing process, right? And we should be constantly revisiting, do we still agree that this is essential? Do we still agree that this is the way that is most effective for student learning? And so for them to just let me jump in and hit record on my camera was a very brave and vulnerable thing for them to do. We're all in different places, even within our own building, every team is in a different place. And so I just want to thank them and again, encourage you guys to please come out, because then you can ask the questions on the fly, things that might be easy. Can't drag it over.
Do you guys have any questions, Michael?
So,
I just wanna thank you all for coming up here, and the program that you're putting in place is not only isolated in education. Very similar programs, they don't call it PLC, they call it other things, but it's in government and it's in manufacturing, it's in healthcare. And creating standards and looking at your data, doing the Plan, Do, Study, Act, Plan, Do, Check Act, there's all kinds of names and acronyms for it, but it is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So that making sure that you continue on it, you're gonna run into areas that are gonna make you wonder why you're doing it, and there'll be days that'll be really rewarding. So is there anything that we can do from a board? Again, let us know to help you support in your journey, let us know. Appreciate it though.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We have one last, it's mine now. One last thing on the agenda, policy for early release Fridays and inclement weather. Dan's gonna be
Yeah,
quick with this
this
one.
I think was addressed with the board about a year ago. And it doesn't come up a lot, but there's concern that my decision-making or me and Charlie is somewhat altered on potential Fridays that you have an early release? Are we gonna bring kids in on a late arrival and have them leave on an early release? Can you put this time frame up there? And I guess I just wanted to come back to the board and kind of remind those that are here that we did have a discussion. It was out of sight, out of mind for about a year, but because we've had snow for about a week, we potentially are gonna face this exact situation on Friday, because there is some snow in the evening. I put up the time schedule because I'm not sure that we did a poll on opinions of where the board is on this, but I think generally speaking, I've been reluctant to do a late arrival and early release on the same day. You know, just because if you got buses, you can barely coordinate it all to make it work. At the same time, just from talking with other superintendents, some districts still do that. They'll bring kids to school for a couple hours and then send them home, you know, so my question to the board is does anybody here remember the conversation? Because I sent an email out to staff that basically said, and that's the one that I attached, can you put it up there?
I don't remember.
I don't remember this one.
Well,
So what are you wanting to do? Are you wanting to change it?
I'm wanting to see if you're comfortable doing what I think we discussed in if we do a late arrival on a Friday that's an early release, that early release doesn't happen. We finish at the regular time. The challenge that I've had in discussion with some is that does that cause a headache for parents because they've already planned for what is there and would have to plan again. Cause really what ended up happening is once this happened last year and you get off into the dailiness of the work, it was not a priority until snow days came up again here this year.
Sure.
Then I was reminded of this.
So the question is, if there's snow on a Friday, and they usually get out early on a Friday, and we start school late, do we do that really, really short day, or do we extend the day to a regular release? Let's start with our students on that one.
Or survey the parents, put a survey up on the district website.
Well, I was thinking these two students. Thoughts on that?
I think it's difficult if you extend that day, if you do a 2-hour late start. I really do. Just because that like pushes back everything that's already planned right after that school day in the first place. And that wouldn't be fair to students or parents to have to kind of change their whole schedule based off a whole new change of a schedule. And it's putting a what if scenario in people's minds, and that's not great, especially if you have pre-planners.
What if you did it and said effective the 25-26 school year, this will be our policy?
I still think it's not fair to the students or the parents to have to figure that out.
But they're already having to figure out the 2 hours late start. So it's just figuring out one other thing on top, because they're already like, school is too much snow, we're gonna do 2 hours late start, so they have to figure that
Very
out.
seldom can we say that the day before and really know. Some days we do, but not very seldom, so.
Mary Ann, thoughts?
Well, the kids that I drive to school like it when you cancel school altogether, so. I've had to explain to them numerous times that there's 180 days in a school year, and when we cancel school, you have to have a makeup day. And I don't think they grasp that concept as of yet.
So thoughts on this actual topic, the early release?
I am inclined to go with Cameron on, cause if I had to plan for childcare or what time I'm getting off work, I don't wanna be scrambling about that also at the last minute that now school time has changed. I'd want it to stay consistent. It's early release Friday, this is what I have my childcare, this is what I have pickup set at. I'm gonna stick with it.
We're trying to make it so we don't have to add more days, correct? Instead of just canceling.
Yeah, there is some, concern on my part that if we do a late arrival and an early release, if that happens too many times, we start to run into
That's a
meeting
dead
the
day.
basic.
Nothing happens on the day, right?
Well, that's one thing that is a fair argument. The other
Yeah.
thing is we've gotta go 1,027 hours average. Cause it's 1,080 at the secondary, 1,000 at the elementary, and the state tried to put some requirements in a few years ago and realized everybody's all over the place.
Right.
So they came up with this average of 1,027, we're at like 1,034. And so if we miss too much, doing late arrival and early release, it could jeopardize that. At the same time, the other argument, I guess, that I'm thinking is we wanna make sure we're not just going through the motions to count a day. Every school day matters. Every hour matters. We only get so much time, and that's probably the bigger concern for me. And I wanna make decisions based on safety needs, not on, trying to manipulate this or manipulate that. I think these are all good, fair points. But, I know that some of the districts on these days will do a late arrival. If they do a late arrival, they just extend it to the end of the day on a Friday. You could go 5 years and it never happens. That's the issue. And so, but the quality of the day is the concern, because you basically are spending all day with the buses running.
Mike?
I think it's too short of a notice for this Friday,
Okay.
but I think it's something that we can put in place for next year, let the parents and at least give them the opportunity for some feedback. But
Michael?
I think most of the time when you get a late start, it is that morning notice that you're telling someone to punt their day and reschedule their morning, to turn around and ask them to reschedule their afternoon as well. I know a lot of parents that intentionally schedule dentist appointments for their kids on, right after school on Friday for those early releases, and figure out how you're gonna get to work late, cancel the dentist appointment, figure out how you're gonna, change it's too much to do to everybody that day. I'd rather see you just say, well, it's not enough time for learning, we're gonna cancel the school day
I think
and then
that's
extend the school year, cause it's a lot easier to change your planning for 4 months later than to change your plan for today.
So it sounds like everybody wants to not do it this year, and then maybe we can discuss it before next year, but keep the things the same way they are now.
Also, I've never, out of all the years I've been in Sultan, I've never known to have a 2-hour late start on a Friday. We have, all the years I've been doing it.
Doesn't mean it
It's a
won't
1 in
happen.
5 chance.
We've never done it, and I've been here since kindergarten. I've
Keep
never
your eye
had
on
it to
this
be.
Friday.
This is
Okay, I
the
will,
year.
but I'm just saying, I've never seen it actually happen where we've had a 2-hour late start.
Probably,
he's
Cameron,
thinking.
honestly, I agree with you. I've probably done whatever I could to avoid it.
Yeah, so I was like, to me, the chances of it really happening are slim. I'm saying there are none, of course, knock on wood.
I would
Like,
prefer we go to school
but-
as much as possible.
Well, let's
Sometimes
leave it
even
as
when we do an
is.
arrival, I would almost rather be here for
Leave it as is, and then we can discuss if we wanna do it for next year. And that's it. We're gonna have executive session. It is, what time is it? That clock.
Thank you again, you guys, I
It's
appreciate it very much.
So we're gonna
Great job.
go out, and then we will start executive session at 7:25 for 10 minutes only. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Got it. Favor?
Aye.
Mary Ann? Everybody voted yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Do you wanna